And welcome everybody to episode 26 of the HOU.SEC cast, the HOU.SEC.CON podcast. I'm joined by my friend Sam Van Ryder. How you doing, sir?
I'm excellent. Back from the dead.
Man, that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of work. We
It
are
was a
back.
blast.
It
Yep.
was a blast. It was a blast. So yeah, obviously, if you don't know, we're talking about HOU.SEC.CON. We just got finished with HOU.SEC.CON 2024. That was our 15th one. We had 2,100 people show up. It's absolutely crazy. And today we are honored to have one of our speakers, Dennis Maldonado, who is also a long-term friend of the podcast. Well, of the conference, but we've mentioned him a couple of times on the podcast too. So excited to
Dennis is
have him
everywhere.
on. Yeah,
He's
he does
everywhere.
a lot of stuff for the Houston community and cybersecurity in general. Going to talk about his talk and his background, all that good stuff. So let's just jump right into it.
Let's go.
All right, Mr. Van Ryder, how are you, sir?
I'm excellent. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Rested up after HOU.SEC.CON, all back and chipper and ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, it's a good 48 hours of recovery after that, but thankfully we had that on the schedule, right? So
A lot of football that weekend, just kind of chilled out. Didn't do a whole lot, so it was nice. So, but now we are back talking about HOU.SEC.CON, talking about HOU.SEC.CAST, talking to one of our speakers at HOU.SEC.CON 2024, Mr. Dennis Maldonado. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. We're really honored to have you on here. You are. We'll talk about your background here in a little while, but for those who don't know Dennis, uh, long-standing part of the HOU.SEC.CON cybersecurity community for a very long time. Been a part of the conference, friend of the conference, known him for a long time. We're really excited to have you on here, doing some slightly different stuff than cyber these days, but you're still, I think your heart and soul still there in cyber, right?
Oh, it's still cyber. One way or another, it's still cyber. And I am honored to be here too. It's been I've listened to this podcast for a long time, been to HOU.SEC.CON for the last time. So finally honored to be on the podcast. Especially it's your first one since HOU.SEC.CON and
It is.
amongst the guests of other keynote speakers from your last episode. So I kind of feel special.
Wow. Well, we're the ones that are honored, man. We really do seriously appreciate you being on here. Been knowing you a long time, done a lot of stuff with you with HOU.SEC.CON. So do want to tell everybody, Dennis is Director of Technology at Harris Fort Bend County ESD 100. That's Emergency Services District. Is that right?
That's right. Yes.
100. So he has, like I said, done a little bit different stuff than just straight up cyber now, but his talk was really good. And we'll get in that in a little bit, but really enjoyed your talk and how that kind of fits into these days. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But before we do that, we've always, as usual, Sam, we got to talk about HOU.SEC.CON. So we have got the next user group. So we did not have a September user group because we were having HOU.SEC.CON. But the next one, if you don't know, we moved it to the Neutrality Data Center in downtown Houston. You need to go sign up for this so you get all of the details. I think Dennis has been to every single one of our user group meetings. What's that?
I'm not going to miss one.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And he's
we
brought a
may
lot
need
of
to
people
pass
there.
that. We may need to pass that whole running of that user conference over to Dennis to run. So
I think
just saying,
Dennis has got
he's
some
been
of
there.
his own.
Always there.
He's got some of his own stuff to run too, though.
I will always help the community one way. There's no competition. I'll help if you guys did.
Well, let's save that discussion until we talk about what Dennis does, because he does a lot for the community still. But we've got Kevin Kipp coming to talk. Kevin's another longstanding user group attendee, and now he's coming to speak. I'm excited about that. But go register, because the email is going to have all the logistics. If I give you all the logistics here, then I say something wrong, and then you'll be mad at me. So just go sign up, get the email, so you'll see the logistics. But I'm really excited about our new spot with Neutrality Data Center. Really appreciate them partnering with us. What's next, HOU.SEC.CON, Sam?
Well, HOU.SEC.CON, that's our next one. We're gluttons for punishment, so let's keep going, right? April 17th at the Norris Conference Center. HOU.SEC.CON, which is HOU.SEC.CON, meaning operational technology. And the whole concept there, we did our first one last year, or this year rather, earlier. And it's all about getting the cyber folks and the operational folks from the plants and other areas together in a room to talk and get to know each other and understand, these different things. And this year we're going to expand. We're going to go for 2 tracks this year. We had 1 track last year. We're going to have 2 tracks this year. So excited about that. And then we have another one coming up, right?
Yep. We've got HOU.SEC.CON, our second one coming up. Well, we say the second one. I mean, it's the second standalone one. We've done these for a long time in some way, shape, or form at HOU.SEC.CON. But the very next week, April 22nd, at the Marriott Marquis. So that's our old HOU.SEC.CON stomping grounds. We're going to go back to the Marriott Marquis. We love that. We love that site. So sign up for that one. I think we're only doing 1 track there, but we're going to have more room, and it's going to be earlier in the year. So we're not conflicting with anybody's summer vacations and that kind of thing. Both of the sites, the websites are getting updated. Tickets are going to be on sale before the end of the year. So just keep it on your radar. More details coming. And I think, Sam, with HOU.SEC.CON, we're going to be doing a CFP. Am I correct?
Yep. That's what we're planning to do. And, but that won't be open until more than likely it'll be January that we do that.
Yep.
So,
but it's a little bit different than what we did last year. We're going to do, but I think HOU.SEC.CON, we're not going to do the CFP, but we're still opening it up, both of them up a little bit wider. Then what's next? One last thing.
Yeah. So, all the talks from HOU.SEC.CON that were recorded, they're all up on YouTube and Vimeo. There's links in the show notes. So, so go check it out. There's a lot of content. And, so that's the first thing. The other thing is we obviously have the dates for next year and, for HOU.SEC.CON, that's the big one, right? So that's September 30th and October 1st. We're going to be back at the GRB. We do have sponsorship packages. You can already sign up for all these things for HOU.SEC.CON and HOU.SEC.CON as well, right? Those 2 are limited, of course. And then we still have limitations around HOU.SEC.CON as well to what the venue can hold. But there'll be sponsorships. We'll be do call for papers on that one as well. And we'll be doing, we'll be doing more around the tickets and all that kind of stuff. Also before the end of the year, we'll have more information out there.
Yep. So be on the lookout for all of that. A lot coming. We don't rest. Sam's right. We just don't stop. We just gluttons for punishment. I don't know. I know why we do it. It's a lot of fun, and we give support to the community.
Look,
so that's
those 2 days, like as hectic as they were, it's just so awesome and fulfilling to see everybody there and learning, and just, it was fantastic. Right. And so, it's enough motivation to keep going.
I agree. It was one last thing before we get into the main segment, into the news and all that. When we were all in our little after party thing that we had, I had somebody ask me how it felt to see the success we've had over the years since 2010. And I literally couldn't answer right then. I couldn't figure it out because I was still coming down from everything. But it was just gratitude, man. The actual feeling was gratitude at all the people that had supported us in the conference and had go to the conference and just are there volunteering and attending and sponsoring and everything else. It was really a huge feeling of gratitude. So really, really awesome time this year. And you're right, Sam. That's why we do it, because it's just a lot of fun.
And I feel like, I literally at this point feel like I'd be letting people down if we didn't keep going. Right. And so, it's that it's the whip that the whip behind us there. But, aside from that, gratitude, same thing, but also, how can you stop? The community needs this, and they're having a great time doing it. So why would we stop?
Yep. And we get to show the Whopper off every year. Very excited.
Maybe some more stuff next year, right? So we'll see. We got some plans within plans.
All right. Well, let's get into it. So, Dennis, you provided us a article for the news segment, and we want to get into that. So I think a lot of people saw this when it came out, and very interesting tech. Maybe there's a lack of all the details because this is a pretty sensitive thing. But the article we're talking about is AT&T and Verizon are reportedly reporting that they got hacked, and specifically where they had a breach was to target the U.S. government wiretapping platform. So where they said is that specifically there's an area there where they're trying to find out the legitimate wiretapping that is going on from the U.S. government. Is that correct, Dennis? Does that sound right?
Yeah. I mean, so these communication companies are required by federal law to have some sort of method for government to be able to issue, like, perform, what is the word I'm looking for? Legal surveillance, like when there's a subpoena or anything that allows it. And so this technology exists for the government to be able to utilize these tools in order to surveil any potential criminals or anyone that they've got a court order to be allowed to surveil. So um, apparently this threat actor, what do they call it, Assault Typhoon, may have breached not just AT&T or Verizon, but other communication companies and providers, and gotten access to those tools and are abusing them to perform their own surveillance of some sort.
So it's a lot of what you see government going after in those is also like terroristic activity. So the Salt Typhoon is a China-based threat actor, but not. I don't think China's not like part of Iran or any stuff like that. But they obviously attack us from a cyber perspective and want to get as much information as they can. And Salt Typhoon, according to the article, goes after all kinds of other stuff too. But this one in particular is trying to find out who we are wiretapping. Could be a lot of really good information for organizations that we would consider terroristic organizations that would want to know if we're surveilling them. So that to me is a major deal.
Right, and I don't want to get too much into the politics of things, right? But it's not that much that it's like a Chinese threat actor, but it's a threat actor that has been known and attributed to be part of the Chinese government, specifically to conduct cyber espionage campaigns against their adversaries, like the United States or other countries in Southeast Asia. And so where they've been discovered by different Microsoft, Kaspersky Labs, ESET, they've been known to be doing things like capturing network traffic or just stealing data that's relevant to national security for that country or nation state, or the tools and techniques and procedures for conducting surveillance or espionage. So that seems to be their target.
Yeah, this whole thing, it was interesting when I saw that come out, and we don't have a lot of details on it, but there's a great book that I read just about a year ago called Wireless Wars. And it was all about the whole history of China really coming in with the Huawei and with all the backdoors and things like that. And then, of course, the government came back and said, hey, we're going to rip that stuff out, as they were trying to capture 5G more or less, right? From that perspective, lowballing to bids and all that stuff to get their gear in. And of course, lowest bidder, there are a lot of them propagated here. And so we don't have a lot of detail. Obviously, it's not been published on this particular hack, but that's the immediate thing I went back to as soon as I heard about it is there any affiliation there or whatever? But, the reality is we're doing it too, on the state side. We're we're not the innocent, totally innocent in this case. And we obviously need it for the protection of our country. Right. But at the same time, so you'd expect it a little bit to happen across the board as well with other adversarial countries, if you will.
Yeah, what I found interesting about, to your point of how they're getting into it, so they've used all kinds of different the exchange vulnerabilities and different backdoors that they've found over the years. One of the avenues that they're investigating for the initial activity was actually in the Cisco routers, and Cisco says they're investigating it, but they haven't seen anything that's saying it happened. But
you should look at the supply chain here. This is where supply chain becomes interesting, right? Because now you're talking about parts that are chips and things like that are not manufactured in the U.S.
And also none of the AT&T or Verizon or Lumen or anybody's commenting on this at all right now.
Right. Yeah. They're publicly traded companies, right? So they have the SEC requirements that if they experience a material cybersecurity incident, they need to report that. But obviously that didn't happen. But there's also a mechanism for them to request the federal government to at least delay that disclosure. And given the sensitive nature of this, government surveillance technologies that have been compromised, it's almost likely that the government did provide them an exemption from disclosing this. And even now that we know about it, the details are still very sparse. I suspect the Cisco thing was just a best guess because they have Cisco infrastructure exposed to the internet, but not an actual, nothing actually indicates that that's the problem.
Yeah, I think it's probably relatively easy to get an exemption when it comes to the sensitive nature of this, and the fact that, is this even material? Like, material meaning what? Does it affect your stockholders? Did it affect your bottom line? Probably not. It affected your connection to the government, which is not material to your business per se.
Right.
If that makes sense. I'm sure there's arguments.
Well, yeah, you're talking about an
national
SEC publicly traded company, right? So, I mean, that's the drive from SEC. SEC doesn't have any focus around government secrets, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say, is affecting national security? Is that material enough? Probably not, because it doesn't affect the bottom line.
That's not material from a SEC business perspective. I
Right.
agree.
This is why we have lawyers. So, yeah.
Gosh, yeah. Don't.
No,
yeah. No. Okay. Well. All right. Well, thanks, Dennis, for that article. Appreciate it. Even though we don't have a whole lot of details, still good to know that it's out there and get some information. So now we're going to go to break. We come back. We're going to talk about you, sir. Get ready. You ready?
Okay.
Yeah. Wait.
Does that feel slightly threatening?
No.
Maybe.
I'm good.
All right. All right. Good. All right. Well, we'll be right on the other side of the break. See you. And we are back. Hope you enjoyed the break. Now let's talk about Dennis. So Dennis, most people who are used to our format, who've listened for a while, know that we like to talk about our guests first, get a sense of where they came from, why they're in this environment, why they do what they do, get those, kind of passion, why am I in this kind of environment? Then we'll get into talking about your talk. So let's talk about Dennis. So Sam and I said in the beginning, we've known you for a long time. I literally feel like I've known you since you were like 14, but I think you were a little bit older than that when you were at the conference.
Is that where I first met you, at the HOU.SEC.CON? Probably 2012, if I had to guess.
I think it was. You were picking locks. You were hanging out with my oldest son a little bit. You were doing
preparing to get himself banned from future CTFs too.
That
right?
is
so
true.
He was working on that really hard. Yeah.
So just to put a finer point on that, Dennis won our first, second, and third CTF, and we did a friendly ban. We're like, look, you can't be just winning every single time. What I thought was cool, though, and you can tell the story if you want, I'll let you tell it, was the guy who put our first CTF together. Y'all reconnected at our after party. And that was 2012. That was 2012 was the first year we had that. So why don't you just get into you? I don't want to steal all your thunder. Get into why you do what you do, and talk about some of those extracurricular activities you do on the side with helping the community and stuff as well.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know how far back you want me to go, but when I was growing up, I've always been nerdy, geeky. I've always taken things apart and try to investigate how they work, break it, fix it, stuff like that. So that's kind of always been in my nature. So, when I was in high school, I was in computer science club, computer maintenance. Anything that had to do with technology or computers, I was involved in it. From theater tech to doing lighting and stuff to computer science and Java programming or whatever we had to do. So I participated in competitions. I eventually became leadership in part of those clubs. I volunteered in everything that I could. And then I was just always building and playing with things. And I was also fortunate to have friends who were interested in similar things. So we always did stuff together, like LAN parties and stuff. But once I moved to college here in the city of Houston, I got my first real job as a systems administrator at a research lab at the university. And it's interesting because within the week, I was still learning everything, right? Because the way I was hired was, congratulations, here's your job. We just fired the other guy, so good luck. So I was still learning where, what everything is, taking inventory, and I get an email from the university saying that all of our research labs IT infrastructure was compromised and was doing bad stuff on the university network. So I was obviously already thrown into the fire. I had to figure out what was going on, how to stop it, and just rebuild all that from scratch. So it was a good experience, and obviously my first real cybersecurity experience, being paid for that. But it really taught me a lot on kind of building IT infrastructure, because I had to build it from scratch, but also incident response for a little bit, how to identify what's going on, how to stop it, and remediate that. But yeah, so I worked there for about 2 years, from freshman through sophomore, all at the same time. Again, I like to work. I didn't really go to the college parties and stuff like that. I was involved in the clubs, extracurriculars, competitions, and working. And one of the many things that I did was when I taught myself cybersecurity concepts like web application security, pen testing, or stuff like that, I would share that. I would go to the clubs and give talks, presentations, or classes on the different tools and techniques. And interestingly, there was two people from a web application security firm here in Houston at the time that went to one of those talks, and as a result, they offered to interview me for a job, and I eventually got that job. So I left the university as a sysadmin and started working as a web application security pen tester. And that was a good experience, because that's all I did. I focused on web application security for a while, about 2 years, and still doing the same thing, still going to different meetups and groups. I think the one I can remember the most is giving when Kali was still relatively new, giving a class on Kali and Metasploit at an OWASP Houston chapter, back when OWASP Houston was still a thing.
Oh, yeah.
And then, much like last time, there was two people from a large oil and gas company that were at that talk, and they ended up inviting me for an interview and hiring me. So I moved on from the web application security firm and went to oil and gas. And I spent a total of 4 years there. 2 years, the first 2 years was with web application security. So we just did web application pen testing for the entire organization, different projects and stuff. But then an interesting opportunity came within the oil and gas company, and we had the opportunity to start a red team. So a full scope red team, not just previously, before that, they hired pen testers to come in and do stuff, but this new program was going to have in-house red teamers that did full scope red teaming, everything from social to web app to network to physical. So spent 2 years doing that. That was very, very, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? I learned a lot from that, because not only do we get to do a little bit of everything full scope, but I also had this large oil and gas company that we just got to hack away at. So if I wanted to focus on one thing, we could, and eventually we find vulnerabilities, report them, and we learn a lot. We have fun doing it, but in the organization becomes a little bit more secure because of that. So after a total of 4 years at that oil and gas company, I went into real cybersecurity consulting, where I worked for a consulting firm for a few years, doing many different industries, pen tests for hospitals or banks, or just a wide range of industries. After about, I think, 3 to 4 years of that, a very interesting non-cybersecurity opportunity came to light. I had been asked to build a 911 dispatch center here in the Houston area. Long story short, a bunch of fire departments needed a dispatch center, because the dispatch center that currently provides in that service was going to go away in a few months. So they had asked me to do that, and I had decided, after thinking about it, to take that opportunity and kind of learn. I've never really built an enterprise style, highly available network from scratch before. So I thought it was a good opportunity to learn, a good challenge. And certainly I was at least a little bit confident I could do it. Otherwise I wouldn't have offered to do it, because of the sensitive nature of that kind of service.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I took that on. And when I started, within 3 months, we were able to build a small little dispatch center, and activated it, and started taking 911 calls. And then since I only had 3 months to do that, that was just kind of a small temporary facility. The next 2 years after that, while we are operating the small 911 dispatch center, we're building a big permanent facility. And as of July of last year, July 2023, that facility is done. That's been open, and that's where I'm recording this podcast now. So, yeah, that's called WestCom. It's owned and operated by Harris Fort Bend ESD 100, like you referenced in the introduction. But yeah, we're called WestCom. We dispatch fire and EMS 911 calls to about 11 fire and EMS agencies. And so whenever anyone calls 911 for the areas that we cover, we answer the phone, we dispatch the fire departments, we do everything we need to do in between, and get the incident taken care of.
That's huge.
Talk about critical infrastructure. That's a big deal. That thing's not working, that's a problem.
Yeah, and that's part of the challenge, right? And that's why I really like that challenge, because I can't just get bored or frustrated and say, and now I'll skip over. I have to solve whatever problems I need to solve. So it does get stressful at times, because, for a private industry, if things are down, it's bad, but no one's life's at risk. I can't really say the same here for every single 911 call. So I do put a lot of effort into making sure this place works, is resilient and available. And I was able to use my cybersecurity and IT experience from my previous cybersecurity jobs to build that in, to build a high level of security from the start, high level availability and resiliency. And I think that's the biggest benefit from all this, was I was able to build it from scratch with security and resiliency in mind. And I also had the support of the ESD 100 board, who approves all the funding, and making sure I had everything that I needed and all the cash that I needed to do that. And so far, we've been operating for about 3 years now. It's been great.
Well, I mean, that's the perfect segue, because that's what your talk was about, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll say it again. I really liked. I didn't get to see it live, obviously, because Sam and I very rarely get to watch any of the talks at the conference itself. But obviously, what we talked about earlier, we got to record it. So I've been watching that I watched it over the weekend, and to see that the stories that you've gone through, that's what I really liked about the talk, was about the stories of the incidents that happen, and not just cyber incidents, but the resiliency and the availability. So why don't you give us a quick run through, a couple of minutes of what your talk was, what was focused on, and then we can get into the bits and pieces.
Yeah. So, like I said earlier, I had the benefit of being able to build WestCom with resiliency and security in mind. So, in order to do that, when we first started designing WestCom, I started threat modeling. I started considering what kind of threats would affect WestCom. And what I like to say is, cybersecurity is protecting confidentiality, integrity, and availability, right? When it comes to prioritizing, availability is a number one important thing. Confidentiality and integrity are important too, but availability is, we need to make sure we can answer those 911 calls and get them out to the fire departments. So every design aspect that I can think of takes that into consideration, accounting for many different threats, like natural threats like hurricanes and storms, human threats, whether it's adversarial attacks or accidents or something like that, and really anything in between. So my talk at HOU.SEC.CON just talks about why 911 or why public safety is important, the types of cyber related threats that public safety entities could face. I go through some example in threats. I can't talk about every threat, because then the talk would be like 6 weeks long, but I cherry pick a few of them. And for each one of those threats, I talk about, I give an incident example. And then I talk about kind of those incidents actually came from WestCom. And then I talk about the lessons learned from those incidents. What went well, how my design kind of minimize the impact of those incidents, and then what didn't go well, like how can I improve so that for future incidents would be recovered from better.
Yeah.
So some of those threats you talked about is like equipment failure. We here at WestCom, we have 2 large UPS systems, like the room size UPS. And the reason why I have 2 of them is, again, to be highly available, redundant. We only need 1 to operate, but we have 2 in case one fails. And I think a few months ago, one of them decided to start smoking to let the what do they call it? The magic pixies escaped.
So,
So
when you said that in your talk, I remember calling it magic smoke.
magic
Like,
smoke, yes.
you know,
Angry
it has that
magic.
unique smell, that electrical burning, hair burning smell. So yeah,
Yeah.
when you called it magic pixie dust, or I was like, well, I used to call it magic smoke, but it's all the same thing. You're right. You see that flowing, you know something's bad.
Yeah, and actually that was our first indication. So there was actually a fault with the UPS that pretty much it was no longer able to provide us emergency power. So in our process of troubleshooting and taking it offline so we can work on it, once we took it offline, within 30 seconds, that's when I started smelling the familiar electronic burning smell, and that's when, you know, oh goodness. So immediately we turned off the
Is that what
fire
you said?
suppression.
Did
No.
you say, oh goodness?
It's exactly what I said. So the first thing I did was turn off the fire suppression system, because that's a gas system. And I knew, okay, this is under control. Let's turn that off so that the whole facility doesn't get inundated by fire suppression gas. And then I was able to quickly turn off all the relevant breakers, unscrew the one piece of the room size UPS that was actually smoking, and run it outside. So it turns out it wasn't on fire like I thought. Thank goodness. That would have been bad. But it was one of the super large, like, I don't know, 10 billion volt capacitors exploded inside of it. So, but thankfully, because we had 2 of those 100 kVA UPSs, we were still good at WestCom. We still had full power. We even still had some method of redundancy and availability. So even if we lost utility power and our generators failed, the other UPS still worked, and we were able to get everything going in 2 days. So, you know, that was one of the threats and the incidents that I talked about in the talk. Yeah, another one, and it's a shame I don't get to talk about this a lot because it's kind of been talked to death. But I'm particularly proud of how we responded. So, who remembers the CrowdStrike one? The
I was
CrowdStrike.
going to ask you if you were going to talk
Oh,
about that here, because you and I talked about that.
That
That
doesn't
was
oh.
that
that
was
doesn't seem
fun.
familiar. I'm not sure. What,
No.
yeah.
Let me tell you the story. So okay, I run WestCom, but I also run I help run another dispatch center out in the Spring area. I didn't build that one, but the IT person that did had since left, so they had contracted me to help manage them. So that's a little background there. But yeah, for CrowdStrike, we operate CrowdStrike in WestCom, and so just out of the blue and it's interesting, right at July 19th, a Friday morning at 0000, I have the log timestamps. I start getting alerts because I have monitoring and alerting. I think you can see behind me, for those on video, the general status of my servers and hypervisors and software and stuff. And I start getting alerts that servers are going down. And that's not beyond the norm. Servers go down all the time for like rebooting and stuff, but I'm getting rapid fire alerts and in no specific pattern. So I immediately start, okay, something is going wrong. I'm starting to remote, I'm at home. So I VPN in, I'm starting to remote desktop. And as I'm remote desktop into servers, I'm losing those connections. So now my heart is sinking. And I'm thinking, oh gosh, me, the cybersecurity guy, finally got ransomware. This is going to be a fun story. I even, for those who are familiar with Dell iDRAC, you can get remote console access so you can see the screen. I'm iDRAC'd into one of my Hyper-V hypervisors, and while I'm in there, I see a blue screen right in front of me, and I'm like, "Oh crap, I'm ransomware." So while I'm investigating this, 15 minutes in, I start getting alerts for the other dispatch center that I help manage the IT for as well, and immediately, actually, I feel better. I'm like, okay, thank goodness this is not a ransomware attack.
Yeah.
It's very unlikely that they got both in the same way. So I feel a little bit relieved, but then I'm back in panic now because now we've got 2 dispatch centers that are down. But I think someone sent me an article saying that like United Airlines and some other airlines have grounded their flights, and that clued me in. Okay, this is some sort of global incident that's going on. And I was actually able, within a few, I think 20 minutes, I was able to attribute it pretty quickly to CrowdStrike. And so I found out that the CrowdStrike agent was causing this outage, and I was able to independently come up with my own resolution and fix that I can implement at WestCom and at the other dispatch center to get everything back up and going. So I think for the timeline here, when everything started for WestCom right at midnight, and 9 minutes after that is when enough of the critical servers failed that WestCom actually lost CAD services, CAD being computer aided dispatch. We resorted to our contingency plan of using pen and paper. Thankfully, because of my network segmentation and security policies and stuff like that, the design of WestCom to keep kind of things separate, we can still take 911 calls. We can still dispatch on the radio. So it was really just the CAD was affected, and all the dispatchers had to do was answer the 911 call, log everything with pen and paper, and use the radio dispatching as per usual. And I'm particularly proud of it because as we were able to identify the root cause and come up with our own fix, even before CrowdStrike acknowledged there was an outage, we were back up and running in 62 minutes and 19 seconds. And just over an hour, yeah, we got CAD back up and running. We were able to get the dispatchers going, and we didn't miss a single 911 call. I think we processed 5 calls within that 62 minutes. And once CAD was back up, they just transferred that from pen and paper back into the computer-aided dispatch software, and everything was good to go. So yeah, I'm proud of that.
That is fantastic. And something that I found very interesting about it, and you mentioned threat modeling earlier, is that you did not see a reason in the CAD systems to have BitLocker in because it just wasn't a need for it. So you did a real threat model, and you were able to get another system, if I remember correctly. Can you tell that?
Yeah. So that's kind of a benefit of threat modeling I actually didn't consider until after CrowdStrike. So we've heard a lot of companies had a tough time recovering from CrowdStrike because it involved touching every single computer, and it took a lot of time, especially if those computers had BitLocker, because there was no way of remote remediation. You had to have someone go in, reboot the computer a specific way, use a BitLocker recovery key, stuff like that. So, but when I threat modeled during the design phase of this facility, with the technology, I decided when it comes to the computer-aided dispatch computers, the workstations that are on the dispatcher's desks, I'm not too concerned with someone breaking into a physically secure facility, getting to the computer, stealing it, or stealing the hard drive and leaving with it. That just, yes, it is a threat. It benefits to protect against it, but it wasn't much of a threat that felt like I needed to spend the time, money, and everything else to do that extra steps to encrypt it. And because I didn't do that, when this CrowdStrike incident happened, I was able to recover pretty quickly because I didn't have to spend time figuring out, which one of these are BitLocker encrypted, what are the recovery keys, getting my, IT staff to go in and decrypt them. I can just start implementing my remediation right away. So yeah, doing that threat model, even though I'm technically less secure because I decided not to implement encryption, full disk encryption, it really saved us a lot of time and resources on having to respond in a more secure but time costly way.
And that's why. And sorry, Sam, I know you want to comment, but that to me, it was just a huge thing because there are so many people who don't threat model. They just put the controls that you're supposed to have in place. And in your case, whether somebody agrees with you or not, you're the one that's in charge. You believe that wasn't necessary, and it saved your bacon in this particular instance in a lot of ways. And I just think that's an important lesson that people need to get out of your talk. One of the most important lessons that I've learned from the whole thing, not learned, I mean, I understand threat modeling, but there's just too many people who go and put every single control in place and don't think about whether or not. Now, some people don't put enough controls in place, but you know what I mean? There's actually doing that exercise and thinking through it, I thought was an extremely important lesson that people need to take out of that talk.
And we often talk about secure by design. That's one of the new things that we talk about these days, right? And that usually applies to, devices and code and things like that. but we're talking architecture, right? And I think that's equally as important. And so what I really like about this whole story is the fact that you did threat modeling as part of the whole design of the architecture to begin with, right? For me, that's a secure by design approach for, and especially for availability, and especially the world I come from with OT, right? Availability is a big deal, safety, all that kind of thing. So, really cool story, very well done. That's very neat to hear. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no, thank you. And it's not to say that we were perfect in that response. There are lessons learned, and I'm very public about. I publicized the after action report that I wrote for this CrowdStrike incident at WestCom. But there are some things we could have improved. Like I'm a cybersecurity guy, so I feel like WestCom is fairly secure as far as firewall policies and stuff like that. But guess what inhibited my response? My firewall policies. So I actually had to adjust my firewall policies, open them up a little bit to allow me to do everything I need to do from home. So, that's one of the lessons learned is reevaluating those policies to still maintain our high level of security, but not hamper our ability to respond to things. And then other things like, communication plan, improving the response plan as a whole, pre-stage tooling. Those are all things that I'm looking and to improve, and I like to be upfront and public about that. Is yes, we did a good job, but we're not perfect. There's things we can improve, and we're always improving.
So what's your IP address at the house?
127.0.0.1.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Well, I think that's a great place to end this one, Dennis. I always say we could talk about this stuff forever, but we've unfortunately only got so much time, and so many people only have so many long car rides that they can listen to all these podcasts. So.
And they can still go look at the presentation online, so it's posted.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
No,
yeah, absolutely.
I really do. It's not blowing smoke here, Dennis. It was a great talk. You did a great job explaining it. I love the transparency, the scenarios. People can learn a lot of lessons from it. So thank you for doing that talk. Seriously, appreciate it.
My pleasure. I always love talking about cybersecurity. I'm super passionate about it, so I'm always doing it.
All right, sir. Well, we will have in the show notes, like we said, your link to your talk so everybody can go enjoy it and then go listen to all the other great talks that we had out there as well. So any parting thoughts, Dennis?
No, I appreciate what you guys do for the community as well. Happy to always be involved with you guys. I feel like we should work more together.
Well, we can find ways to do that. Absolutely.
Be careful what you ask for.
What's that?
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Be careful what you ask for.
Yeah, you'll get voluntold quick around here.
Yeah.
All right, Dennis. Thank you very much. Sam, any last thoughts, sir?
Oh, fantastic. Just more goodness. I mean, this is good stuff.
It is.
That's all I can say.
Providing value. That's what we're all trying to do here. I appreciate everybody listening. Keep listening. We'll have, I think this one comes out here in October 16th, something like that. And then we'll have another podcast just a couple of weeks after that. We're going to keep doing that until next year, until the next HOU.SEC.CON, trying to get some more value out there. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to episode 26. We will see you on episode 27.